obviously each of you has done a variety of investigative work, and that kind of journalism requires this sort of seduction process in which you're earning someone's trust. And I wonder, how you sort of balance that as you source.
That's a facet of these stories that people often, I think, don't understand. A lot of this is about relationship building with sources, and they have to feel comfortable. I think particularly for deeply personal stories like this, they have to feel comfortable. And I've never run a story about someone using their name without their permission, for instance. When it comes to these issues of sexual violence, I think that's important, and that's how you get at the truth of what these people have to say.
It can be extremely difficult because you really need to win people over. And how do you do that in a way that's not becoming their friend? And how do you keep them at an arm's distance and get them in a place where they feel comfortable with who you are, but you're not their friend and you're not their advocate? And it can be a very difficult balancing act. If a relationship starts as a source relationship, it's always a source relationship. It can get friendly, and you can be friendly, but you're never friends. It's always a source and And on the other hand, I always remember on the friend side that if I have a friend, and a friend can tell you something, at the end of the day, they started as a friend, they end as a friend, and that's the most important thing, to try and divide them. But it can be difficult, especially in Washington, where everyone is sort of intertwined. It's such a one-industry town, and folks that socially, you meet may not turn out to be folks that you're interested in because of work, and then all of a sudden they're working on an investigation that you really care about. So how do you balance the two of them? And that can be a struggle, because at the end of the day, it's about the work.
Ronan, you mentioned that you tell people, I'm not your friend.
Yeah. And you have to say it several times sometimes, because on these really tough, sometimes long stories, there is a pretty intimate rapport that develops in some cases. And I think that's a fine thing as long as someone understands exactly what they're in. I think Ginger's point about always having the notebook out, whether that's true literally or metaphorically, is an important one. The theme that we all keep touching upon is transparency. As long as you are putting all of your cards on the table and really trying to, in a humane way, explain to people what this is, what you're after, what their interests are that are separate from yours. A reporter, I think, is quite good. Ben Terrace did this story a while back where he published his interview with Kellyanne Conway, where she just trashed her husband, and then afterwards was like, "Oh, and attribute that to a source familiar with me, a source familiar with my thinking." And he was like, "No." Yeah. What a wonderful couple! They seem very happy.
More recently, we wrote a story about how Rod Rosenstein had offered to wear a wire to record his conversation with the president, and had discussed invoking the 25th Amendment. This was in May of 2017, less than 4 months after Trump took office. And that story, we received a lot of criticism from the left, which went after the sourcing on the story, but in a larger sense was saying to us that we should not have published the information, that we should not have published it because we were going to be giving Donald Trump a reason to fire Rosenstein and ultimately go after Mueller. And it was a good exercise for us, because it gave us sort of a refresher in our need to be prepared to push back. And we ultimately, got down and sort of explained our reporting. And what happened is that the information on Rosenstein fell into sort of two buckets. There was months long of reporting in which we really had to push people who didn't want to talk to us about this matter, about what Rosenstein had said and about how he had said it in a serious way. And these were folks that we trusted and had contemporaneous availability to this information as it was going on. And that was a pretty solid bucket of reporting, a bucket that we felt good enough to publish. Without fear or favor, as sort of the Times credo goes, we're going to follow these facts. And that means that, my Twitter, feed may be filled with folks saying that I've, helped destroy the country, over several days. But that sort of comes with what we do.
Tell us about when you started working on the story of family separation. when you started to hear reports about this and how you came to get a hold of this recording.
I got a call from a woman who I've known for years who said there's a tape out there. It was an audio that was recorded inside a facility, and what you hear on it is pretty devastating. The tape comes into my cell phone. I put it on our car stereo. I looked at my significant other. He had tears in his eyes, and I said, okay, we've got to figure out, is this what I've been told it is? The tape, if you haven't heard it, it is the sounds of children wailing. They had just been separated from their parents, and this little girl is sort of asking this Border Patrol agent for a phone call. And she's saying, please call my aunt. My aunt will come and get me. And so she starts rattling off a phone number. And it was that phone number that allowed us to authenticate the tape. And I dial a number, I get a woman in Houston who says, my niece came across the border with her mother, and she called me from a Border Patrol detention facility.
I began hearing rumors in Washington that there was somebody who had an allegation, but it was just rumors. And I was having trouble tracking it down, and I was being told things off the record that I couldn't use by people who knew a little bit. And then, lo and behold, Ronan began to get something that we actually could use. And I was sworn to secrecy because it was off the record. Ronan and I did take a lot of flack on the Debbie Ramirez story. All these people think that you've done something wrong. It's unbelievable. You just have to keep your blinders on and keep doing the best job you can do. But Kavanaugh defenders, you know, they had the spears, and they were coming after us.